Welcome to the Metropolitan Club. I'm Mindy Wright, a member of CMC's Board of Trustees and Director of the nonprofit Higher Education Alliance. I'm happy to see you all here on this wintry day. I know I'm in the minority. I like snow, so I was really happy when I got up this morning. Today's forum is presented by CMC and Ohio Health as part of our Healthy Community series, with additional support from Mount Carmel Health Systems. Please help me thank Ohio Health and Mount Carmel for their support. With so many households struggling to make ends meet and put meals on the table, it's a staggering statistic to learn that about 1/3 of all the food produced in our country is either never harvested or is thrown away. How is this environmentally, economically, or ethically possible? Thankfully, a number of private and public entities are attempting to tackle this issue in a host of creative and thoughtful ways. Let's hear more from our experts. Please welcome Van Buren Professor and Undergraduate Program Leader, Agricultural, Environmental, and Development Economics Leader, Ohio State Food Waste Collaborative, OSU. That's a long academic title. Brian E. Rowe. Corporate Affairs Manager at the Kroger Company, Amy McCormick, and Director Innovation and Programs at Swaco, Kyle O'Keefe, and our host, President of Public Radio's WCBE 90.5 and host of the syndicated program, The Amazing Science Emporium, Dan Michalko. Dan, I'm turning the stage over to you.
Thanks, Mindy. It may seem, for those of you who see me out and about, that this is an unusual topic for me to be moderating, but the connection is very clean and clear and deep. WCBE is a division of the Columbus City Schools, and we're located at the Fort Hays campus of the Columbus City Schools. So we are reminded every day of the other side of the food waste equation, the people who aren't getting the food. You may know that a few years ago, Columbus Schools stopped having a free and reduced lunch program for people who applied. There were so many students in Columbus going hungry that it just applies to all students. It's just much easier to do it that way. At Fort Hays, at the time they made that transition, 90% of the students had to be on that program. Some of the students that I've dealt with did not eat over the weekend or on school breaks because they couldn't get that food. So this issue is very important to me. There are things that we've done at the station that try to address the issue, everything from trying to have our own little project garden to show kids that they can grow food in very small spaces, all the way up to every December, and this is my shilling time, for our end-of-year donations. Any time that someone donates to WCBE, at whatever level, DNO Produce donates 3 pounds of fresh produce to the Mid-Ohio Food Bank. Now you know the motivation for that, why we started that program. And maybe we'll start something with Kroger soon, who knows? But that's why this is so important to me. So the first thing I want to get to really is the broad math of this. We have all these hungry people, but you were telling me that up to 1/3 of our food in the pipeline is wasted. Is that true? Is it 1/3?
Globally, it's 1/3. Where it gets wasted is a little bit different depending on country from country. Developing countries, more food is wasted near the farm. In developed countries, more at the retail and the consumer level.
I'll ask you to, we talk a lot about numbers. I'm a very visual person. So think about today. You're the US. We're going to go grocery shopping. Hopefully you go to Kroger. You go in, and let's just, for math's sakes, bear with me. You buy 5 bags worth of groceries. You go out to your car, you put 3 of them in, you leave 2 in the parking lot, and you leave. That's absurd, right? You think no one would do that, but we do that every day in the US. That's one of the reasons a year ago, the Kroger Company launched our social impact plan of Zero Hunger, Zero Waste. And at the end of the day, we have a very bold mission to end hunger in the communities we operate by 2025 and remove all waste from our stores by 2025. And that's why it was a perfect fit for us to be here today.
Yeah, I'll just add, Brian mentioned this, but we actually waste the most amount of food in our households, is what some of the research has shown. So we think about restaurants, we think about these facilities, but actually in our homes is where we're generating a lot of this waste. And so there's a lot of things that connect back to us and our behaviors and things that we can do individually, collectively to change that.
Well, why is it? Why is it us in our homes? What are we doing or not doing that we should be more cognizant of?
I think part of it is food is so inexpensive in the United States that it isn't valued as much as it might be in other cultures or in other situations. And, we're busy people. All of us here are busy people. We're in a lot of busy households, and it's such that it takes a lot of energy and effort to plan the meals, get the right portion sizes, figure out all the contingencies. Or if you are food insecure, sometimes you're receiving items that might not be your first choice, and so therefore you're not consuming that at such a high level.
Please stand by.
Yeah, no, Brian makes a good point. And, ultimately, I think, from a behavior standpoint, too, a lot of folks don't realize the impacts that food waste has, both environmentally, economically, socially. When we're talking about these issues, a lot of that information doesn't always reach our everyday consumer as well. And so I think part of this is about raising awareness, but also just understanding some simple tips and resources. I know even for myself, as I've been going through part of what SWACO's initiative is on food waste, I've been challenging myself to try and reduce food waste. And it's not always as easy as you might think it is. But a little bit of thought can go a long way. I mean, doing some meal planning. I shop less frequently now, but I also buy less when I'm at the store. And so those types of small changes and part of the behaviors can go a long way.
Well, I want to come right back to you on this aspect of it, because with SWACO, one of the things that impressed me is that SWACO recaptures the methane of degrading materials in the landfill. Wouldn't you want more waste so you can get more methane?
Interesting thought. Yeah, we were talking earlier about this, and there's various research out there, and some has shown that actually when some of this material is breaking down, even as it's beginning to enter the landfill, a lot of the methane is actually being released before it's even able to be captured in our system. But really for us, and part of our mission and our vision at SWACO, is to use materials and resources to their best and highest value. And so this ending up in the landfill is not the greatest value of that material. And so if we can find alternatives from preventing it from taking place in the first place to rescuing edible food and working with partners such as Mid-Ohio Food Bank and others, or even composting and recycling it, that's what we'll do.
Because it's not just the methane coming off the landfill, it's all the land that went into that. That's why World Wildlife Fund supports a massive research into food waste, because they're worried about that land being used and crowding out wildlife, and it's all the energy that goes into transporting it, to storing it, all the money, all the intermediate goods that go into that.
Yeah, and we just partnered with World Wildlife Fund. They're one of our partnering agencies along with Feeding America in our Zero Hunger, Zero Waste mission. And when you talk about food rescue, and that's one of the overarching goals, and it kind of takes both Zero Hunger and Zero Waste, puts them together. So within each of our stores, our 100% participation in our stores on food rescue. We want to sell everything, right? We're a retailer, but we have a markdown process, and then it goes into the food rescue of each of our perishable departments. Then we work every week. Mid-Ohio is in our Central Ohio stores. Then we have more than just one day a week for pickup. So we also work with them. They have 680 Feeding America partner agencies who then are coming to our stores, picking up, and within a day to 2 days of that food who was unsellable, for us to be able to put that in the homes of someone who needs it.
And just to add to that, we were talking about World Wildlife Fund and Kroger's and these partnerships. SWACO just recently received a grant working through Kroger Foundation with World Wildlife Fund to start a pilot project in the Columbus City schools to actually implement food waste reduction curriculum and kind of food rescue activities, and also even some food composting efforts as well. So that'll be happening beginning of next year. So that's great news for Central Ohio.
Well, Amy, I want to come back to you, since we're at the individual level at this point still. When Kroger orders food, how do you prevent waste on the predictive side, on knowing what are people going to buy, and how even with ugly fruit, ugly produce, how do you know who's more likely to take advantage of that? Who's more likely to respond to preventing food waste?
Two pieces there. We have an analytic arm called 8451. I always like to share this. It's the longitude and latitude of where the building sits in Cincinnati. A nerd fact.
That's
there
cool.
We go.
Yeah. You just made my day.
There you go. So 8451 does a lot of research relative to products, our shopping patterns of our customers. So our ultimate goal is that we are getting those orders right. So we're not causing overage before we even have an opportunity to sell it. So that's first and foremost. When you talk ugly fruit, there is kind of a trend going where people are like, hey, the apple's kind of small, but it can still make a great pie. Or that cucumber's a little more bumpy than what I like, but I can peel that, peel that part off. We actually, in 2019, will be looking to launch a product called Peculiar Picks. So we're actually going to look to package that imperfect produce for that exact reason. There is someone who will want to purchase that. Now, if you go to our produce departments now, you should see our Zero Hunger, Zero Waste displays in produce that are, we call them recipe ready. I know I talked to somebody the other day at Swaco, and he looks for that because he does a lot of canning. So he's like, hey, this stuff's perfect. It may have a little spot or whatever on the tomato, but I can can it and use it later.
And there are other models out there as well. Imperfect Produce, a group out of California, uses high technology to try to find those products still on farm, repackage them, and sell them out in small bundles, not to promote the competition, but they're out there as well, and other concepts too.
Well, since you brought it back to the farm, let's follow the chain all the way up to our mouths or our trash cans, starting with the farm. And I read that and I don't remember the statistics. Thank goodness you're here because you can give me the numbers. How much food is wasted because it's just left on the farm field? It's not even harvested.
Yeah, there are studies that show anywhere from 2 to 40% of crops that are left in the field that are edible, but cosmetically don't meet the need, or the market is so poor that there's no reason to spend the extra money to actually bring it out of the field. And it varies a lot by region, it varies a lot by individual product, but it's a tough decision because you're not only thinking about this year, you're thinking about this has to make it all the way down the supply chain to the retailer, to the home, and so it's very difficult to grow the right amount, and you never want to grow too little, and so there's a lot of incentive to kind of overproduce at any particular time.
Now, what about politics, economics? Well, obviously economics, because of what you mentioned, but does politics play into this at all?
You know, this is one of the few things I've actually seen. It's one of the few bills that there's been an initiative to try to introduce food waste or food date labeling and do some food waste issues at the federal level. And there's actually bipartisan support for that. It just hasn't made it out of committee yet. So it's one of the few things where I've actually seen bipartisan support, even at the federal level. It hasn't made it to the congressional floor yet, but there's at least good conversation about that right now. So I'm kind of encouraged.
Yeah. Do you happen to know the bill number?
It was in 2016, and Rep. Fudge was part of that group that was pushing some of this work to revise donation law to make it easier to write off tax donations in this space and to kind of grease the wheels here. Yeah.
And I think date labeling kind of goes back when you talk consumer education. And you know, I'm one of those, I'm guilty of it. I'm one of those people, my in-laws make fun of me. I'd be on a desert island and I would die of starvation, but there would be food, but it had an expiration date and I just can't do that. So I'm trying to work around that, you know, get myself over that hurdle. But that's part of the problem too with dating. So we're excited. The Kroger Company in 2019 is actually looking to change our brand's dating, and we're going to move into an industry standard that's been set by the GMA and FMI, where it will be, I don't want to say it wrong, used by for food safety, and then we will do best if used by for food quality. So it really makes it, as a consumer, when we see that, that's a different message than it's expired.
So right? The date on most products is the peak quality date, and so the date thereafter just means that the quality is likely to degrade, other than a few products like deli meats that don't have a kill step. So for the most part, those dates, if you're having that argument at home about, no, you got to dump it out, it's the day after. No, in most products, it's a quality peakness date and not a safety date.
You bring up a great point about politics in this subject, and obviously every subject has some degree of politics, and food is big business as well. But really, there's great momentum going on both in this country, in this state, around the world when it comes to food waste. This over the past 5 to 7 years, I mean, food waste has been one of the hot items for everybody, and so there's great energy locally here even to make a change when it comes to how we're managing our food waste. Excellent.
Well, let's hop over then to where we got started on all this, of all the hungry that we have. And I don't know, Mid-Ohio Food Bank, if someone's here, you might be able to correct me, but 70 million meals last year that were missed in Mid-Ohio Food Bank's coverage area, if I remember correctly. That's a huge volume of hungry people. How are we missing getting this food to them? Where's the gap? Where's the disconnect?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a big logistics issue because predicting demand is always difficult, no matter how much 8451 works. There's always still going to be bumps in the road that you don't predict in terms of that. And it's a highly perishable product. There are things like catering events where you've got just too many meals. People didn't show up at a particular table. It's really tough to find a donor in time to do that. There are some technology platforms that are improving that. Food Rescue US is here operating in the Columbus area and doing a fantastic job. I know Swaco is going to be working with them a bit on that as well. And you probably want to talk a bit about that, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some great nonprofits. Obviously, Mid-Ohio Food Bank is doing some excellent work. One of the, leading examples in the country. We're also fortunate to have other small nonprofit organizations who are going around and collecting prepared meals from restaurants and other facilities and getting those out to folks who need it. And there's really a lot of work to be done at the food pantries too to help them, make sure they have the capacity, the ability to handle the right amount of material. But then also they have an issue too with generating waste as well if people aren't getting that in time. So it's really being mindful about all those connections and trying to make sure there's enough support there to make it work.
Okay, here's the big one that you may not be prepared for. You talked about the end product, us, wasting. We talked about it being on the farms wasting. There's the logistics in getting it to the hungry. What is, in your knowledgeable opinion anyway, the best way, the best path to a solution? Is it that we as individuals are better about our food choices and what we're wasting and what we're not, and not being so paranoid about the expiration date? Or is it more of a societal thing? Do we start looking at the big infrastructure pictures? Something the government needs to do as opposed to us as individuals. So do we start small and go big, or start big and go small?
It's all of that. It's a collaboration. It's all of the reason we're all here today having the conversation. We have academic, we have public, private. We're all here today because hopefully you were interested in the topic and you want to make a change. So it really is that collaborative conversation, everyone coming together, identifying where you can personally. So tonight when you're making dinner, you're thinking about what maybe could I have done different when I shopped, that I don't have the stuff I'm going to have to throw away in the refrigerator. Moving on to whatever your line of professional business is, what can your organization do to get involved? It's really, to me, it's collaborative. It's everyone.
And I think the consumers are very important as part of that, because even if you implement great technical efficiencies at the farm level, distribution level, what that does is basically pushes more supply into the marketplace, pushes price down, and then if consumers see even cheaper food, if they haven't bought in and changed their habits, why not waste something that's cheap? So it really takes that combination of some consumer change, whether that be more architecture because of the design of products, or the date labels, or the packages, as well as the technical efficiencies all throughout the system.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add to what Amy mentioned. I mean, it takes all of us and a collective effort. It takes a community really to make the change on this subject. We've been fortunate. We just started a process, so maybe 3 months ago, which a lot of folks in this room have been involved with, called the Central Ohio Food Waste Initiative. And in the first quarter, probably in July or February, January or February, we'll be releasing basically kind of a food waste action plan for Central Ohio. And we've been engaging over 50 stakeholders on this, everything from public agencies agencies to universities to groceries and understanding this issue, and how can we all work together to collaboratively address it. So that's going to be hopefully a great resource for everybody in the community and where we can go and how we can do it.
Count us in. We'll spread the word.
Yeah,
Exactly. Eyewitnesses. So we're held to it. Scattered throughout the conversation, you've mentioned different programs that have been initiated here and in other states. I'd like each of you to pick a favorite success story, a favorite program, so we have an example that we can wrap our heads around and either support or initiate on our own. So,
Sure. At Ohio State, there's been this fantastic energy by students. They've worked hand in glove with our dining services to go and collect items that have been prepared but haven't been able to be served just because the demand analysis wasn't quite right and they had just had too much product. And so they're working their way across campus almost on a daily basis to collect this food, linking up with key agencies who have hungry mouths to feed and making that connection both through Food Rescue US's platform and some of their own connections that they've made. And that's been really inspiring to see students kind of push forward in that direction.
So a call to action for everyone, for us, the way we are able to connect and provide an opportunity for consumers to engage and get resources to feed our neighbors is through our Roundup and Coin Box. So we have Roundup at all of our stores, so just think about that when you're shopping. And I'll also ask you to encourage others to do it. It's not a Kroger program. We don't have it trademarked. And I always wonder, how can we get others to jump in from a retail standpoint? It doesn't matter who they're giving the funds to, as long as it's going to something that's helping the initiative of hunger and waste in our community.
Yeah, I might mention a couple. One of them is actually Hilliard City Schools. We provided a grant to last year, actually this year, it's underway, and they've been actually implementing food waste reduction efforts throughout their entire school systems, as well as composting efforts as well. So I think they're starting basically in their elementary schools and kind of working up to spread them throughout their entire school district, but they've made a commitment to diverting all the food waste that's generated within that school district, and so that's a huge effort. But we also have other local groups as well. We have urban farms now right down the road who are actually gathering food waste that's generated in their community, turning that food waste into fertilizer, compost, and then using it to grow food to feed people in that community who are underserved. So it doesn't get any more local than that, really.
well, on the grocery shelves, when we're shopping, what is the greater part of the food waste? Is it the produce section, the fresh food, or is it canned, processed types of foods?
It's perishable.
Perishables.
So it's really the 5 perishable departments for us. So from deli, bakery, meat, produce, dairy. And that's what's so important for us, to follow our procedures in store. We have it down to a science, and we work really hard to ensure that we're hitting that mark and the items after markdown are being able to nourish humans. However, we go beyond that. It doesn't go in. I don't want to send pounds to Kyle and Swaco. Our goal is then our stores know we have amazing associates who we take the packaging off, that's recycled, whether that be paper, plastic, then we're able to recycle the food waste or scraps that are left that are not consumable.
And of those perishables, the animal products are going to have the biggest carbon impact on the kind of farm to that point as well. So it's always great to prioritize those items that are going to have the biggest environmental impact as well.
Absolutely.
And a good point to mention here, too, not all food waste can be eliminated or reduced. There's a lot of aspects of food waste that, there has to be another solution to. It can't be prevented. It's this, it's the rinds off of certain fruits or produce. It's all sorts of things. So, we need to have the infrastructure in place, too, to be able to capture that and compost that material as well. And that's something that we're looking at for Central Ohio. We're conducting a study to look at what is the infrastructure that would be needed to actually capture this material, divert it, turn it into a resource, and how can we do that at a residential and a commercial level?
We've got some great providers who are starting that process and giving us some base capacity to work with as well around Franklin County.
Absolutely. There's some great startups that have been working to divert food in this community, so that's excellent.
Go ahead and name them.
Yeah, we got Innovative Organics here in the room, Ray Leard, and so Ray's collecting material from businesses and residents and diverting that material, turning into a compost product right here in Central Ohio as a business as well. So go ahead.
The microphone.
While he's going to the microphone, I'll mention too, last week, our company had an innovation open, and we brought in a lot of innovators in the window of reducing waste and feeding folks, and we were just amazed at the number, just the overall quality of everything that came to the table. And I'm excited next month in Sunbury, there's Glass Rooster Cannery, who takes items from the field and is canning those into shelf-stable products. So I'm excited to see where we're going to be able to partner with that local organization as well.
Before you speak, I just want to make it clear, this is not the beginning of the Q&A session.
But I just wanted to add on to that. I'm Steve Grossman with Bexley's Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee, which is the second city in the state that has a zero waste plan approved by our council. And we have a pilot program going on right now with Innovative Organics, of which 400 households of the 4,200 households in Bexley are participating every week. And this deals with waste, household food waste, which you really can't do anything with, while a few homes have composting in the backyard. Ray's operation picks our food waste garbage up every week. And it goes to a wonderful composting facility, which is eventually sold to organic farmers, the materials. And we're looking forward to next year, early next year, our council adopting a citywide program. So
I'm one of those 400 households in Bexley, so yeah, I really enjoyed the program. And
That's pretty good. 10% actually is a good participation rate at this stage. On the individual, I've two follow-up questions, one from way earlier, one more recent because someone mentioned gardening. And that's my answer. I've been an organic gardener since I was 18. Does that help or hinder the process? People growing their own food, does it help in that we're recycling our waste and turning it into compost? Or are we creating more waste in the broader food stream because we're growing our own food?
it's a bit of a double-edged sword. The data, we've done some work that in the retail setting, if you tell people that you're composting your food waste, people tend to not reduce their own food waste and say, oh, something good is going to happen from it. However, given that there is going to be waste always because of inedible portions and just because of being perfect is really costly, it is a great thing to have composting in your backyard. But it is always some of that give and take that when you have compost, you're more willing to let that product go bad in your refrigerator and move on to the next thing. So there is some back and forth there.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I think the more resilient we can make our communities and our behaviors and our choices, the better. And so if you're growing your own food, that's excellent and amazing. If you can turn your products into a soil amendment that you can use, that's wonderful. Is it for everybody? Maybe not. But there are certainly those who it is, and that's a great thing to advocate for. Yeah.
And now the bigger issue for me, from right where we started. A lot of cool programs. I loved hearing about the studies that are going on. I loved hearing about the work that's being done with some startups and nonprofits. I still see hungry kids on campus every day. What happens next to get that food to those kids?
Yeah, I think the programs will proliferate to some extent, but there's also a hunger issue that goes beyond being able to solve it completely through recovering perfectly edible food. So I think there'll be expansion of these programs. The technology platforms are expanding. The energy is there from community groups and students, and so we'll make a dent from that side, but it can't be the only solution to hunger in the community.
Ditto. And I would also just add to that, I'm proud to see the work that's being done from Mid-Ohio Food Bank's standpoint. They just completed, again, it's that bringing everyone together, held an event, Imagine the Impact, and that's what the conversation was about. Yes, the waste is important it's important for us to divert waste, but there are still hungry people in our backyard. And the fact that any child goes to bed with an empty stomach makes me sick, and I hope it does all of you. So we have to come together as a group and determine what are the best ways we personally, and then we as a community, can make an impact.
Yeah, and I would disagree with Amy. I mean, I think we've got the right people that are coming around the table to discuss this issue, and so no child should ever go hungry in this community. That's a fact. So,
And despite our false start, We will be having a Q&A session in just a couple of minutes, so go ahead and line up to the microphone if you have further questions for the panel. And while they're doing that, my last question, the future. Where do you see this issue and the solutions for it? Let's go short term, 5 years, and then a little longer term in 10 years.
There's a lot of private sector money flowing into this right now. I had the opportunity to be down at Kroger when the 8 groups pitched to Kroger and saw some of the 40-some that pitched their ideas. And there's some fantastic technology solutions. Kroger and other companies are using some very intriguing technologies that, for example, could make that avocado have a shelf life of 30 days rather than, well, whatever. You never know when that avocado is going to go bad. So there definitely are some exciting technologies, some information platforms, and potentially improved labeling and transparency of information there that will start to push that here in the medium term.
And not to sound redundant, but I think within the 5 years, you're exactly right. There's a lot of work being done, and a lot of it's just starting. And so we're going to see those wheels start moving even faster, and we'll see a lot of progress being made in 5 years. But long term from there, I'm excited at the number of people and organizations who have recognized the problem and working to a solution. Like I mentioned, we plan to end hunger in the communities that we operate in as a company by 2025. So that's our long term.
I mean, there's a lot of great things that we can do today. There's a lot of great services and programs out there that people can participate in, and there's no excuse why we shouldn't be. And so, I know one of the things that we're already working on is an educational campaign that we'll be developing over the next few months and launching next year that really, empower people with how do you take action? What can you do? So that's going to contribute significantly. But, we do have to look at the larger systems and the infrastructure. I mean, this goes to policies. Changing policy can take 5 years, it can take 10 years. But as we're also looking at infrastructure, we're talking about curbside collection programs, things like that. Those are huge investments for community, and they have to make economic sense as well. So we need to make sure that we have the capabilities to do that long term and successfully.
Speaking of capabilities, and this is a little thing, you mentioned the avocados, keeping them riper longer. What is that technology? I haven't seen it yet.
So we partnered with an organization out of California. It's called Apeel, A-P-E-E-L, and currently we're selling all of our avocados in our Cincinnati division, and we do plan to roll it out in 2019 to other divisions. And it's basically an edible coating that goes on the avocado that really, as Brian mentioned, it extends the freshness life of that particular product. So
yeah, I saw the pitch at Food Tank in New York City a couple of years ago, and go online, Google them, you'll see the videos of time-lapse photography of all these products, both with and without it. And it could be a real game changer for retail produce sections because of the way it works. So, yeah.
So the secret of the Twinkie applied to produce.
And it's made out of wasted food as well. So that's even better to boot. Yeah.
I've got a lot to look up now. Yeah. It is CMC's tradition to take questions from the audience. As you step up to the mic, please state your name and ask your question. And in fairness to everybody, remember to avoid editorial comments. That's a warning every week, and it seems like somehow it slips through despite that. Questions end with question marks. So let's get started. First question.
Thank you for being here, and this is a really important topic. The very end of your conversation, I'm Jim Bruner, by the way, with the Past Foundation here in Columbus, and I'm also an urban gardener, like Dan. But as you talk about education, one thing I would like you to keep in your mind is that the educational model is an artificial model. We teach kids at the times when nature doesn't need them growing food. We forget about the summer. So as you move forward with your educational programs, keep that in mind and think about backup systems for as you work with schools and you work with communities, that a lot of the time people just go away in the time that nature needs them most to work on sustainable agricultural solutions, right? And the other one is logistics for that same reason. When are the kids, how you engage the kids, how you get them personally engaged. Do you guys have strategies for thinking about that now?
That's a great Question. So that's one of the things that we're working on with World Wildlife Fund, actually. So they've been developing some curriculum. They call it, student food waste warrior. And so they make it fun, they make it interactive. And those are some of the things that we're going to be testing in some of the classrooms as well to kind of make it engaging, get it to be personable, and then empowering them with choices and options on how to make a difference and actually measuring that and understanding the impacts. So.
Urban agricultural programs at the Pass Foundation, and for 4 years straight now, I see the same drop, and it's the failure point every time. So if you're looking for a strategic partner on that, we have a lot of data for you.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. My name is Greg Trout. I wonder, can you talk about, are there legal concerns and impediments that need to be addressed at some point that inhibit people from donating because of their concerns about liability or legal requirements? Also, if you could address, are there ways that you would suggest that we could learn more or even get involved in assisting a zero waste kind of effort?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so state code right now presumes no liability. The Good Samaritan Law is a federal act from, was it 1996, that shields those who are donating food and do so in good faith from legal liability. There's still a lot of hesitancy out there because to our knowledge, there's never been a case of a lawsuit that stemmed from somebody donating food, and then other people turn that around and say, yeah, but I want to see it go to court first before before that holds up. But there are legal protections built into both federal and state code, as long as you're, again, acting in good faith. And they're even improved code for things like share tables at schools, so students who don't want certain items that are wrapped or whole pieces of fruit can leave them on a table that's being monitored. There's good advice coming from both Ohio Department of Ag and Ohio Department of Health, I believe, to make sure that those tables are run. So if your school is interested in that, there's ways to do that such that it's within the kind of legal confines of good practice. And you were going to say something too, I think.
I was just going to add that those are some things that we're working on with this group of stakeholders as well, in terms of, are there resources that are missing that can help to educate more businesses on, hey, you can do this. This is how you do it properly, and here's the partners that you can work with to get rid of that food, and here's the benefits too. So just those simple educational materials might go a long way as well, and just simplifying it. So that we're looking at doing that.
Sometimes it's a throwaway line. Yeah, we probably can't do that legally, so I don't want to do this anyway. I'll find an excuse. And so that's when it's often thrown out.
Mm-hmm. Amy, you were nodding very energetically. Yeah.
You asked about resources. So obviously, SWACO is an amazing resource when it comes to prevention, recycle, all of the education pieces, but I'd also mention the Franklin County and Columbus Local Food Plan, looking that up, and there's a lot of work being done locally with that particular plan on how to feed our hungry neighbors. So maybe there's a way to connect personally or your organization with the work that's being done there as well.
And I'll just add to that too. The City of Columbus Public Health and the Franklin County, they've done a tremendous job, and that really connects the dots here, especially when we're talking about food waste, but also what happens with growing more fresh produce in our community and getting it to all of our members of society here too. So,
excellent.
Hello, Cheryl Wooten with Western Area Resource Ministry, WARM. We're choice food pantry as well as an employment services. So I first of all want to say thank you to Kroger because they've been a valued partner of ours for a number of years, and to also say as a testament that Roundup really works. That helps sustain our pantry month after month, and that's invaluable. My question to you is, because we have clients who are a number of systemic as well as situational poverty, it's not just a poverty of food, it's a poverty of education. And how do I sustain my fresh produce? And how do I, we've gotten away from canning, we've gotten away from talking about fresh and flash frozen food that will also be very stable in the refrigerator. So in your education process, can we get some of those helps as well? A lot of what we do is educating our clients and talking about fresh foods. We compost as well. So when we have food that may be the end date, and I'm thrilled that you're changing that, because then we can give it to other kitchens and others that can use that. But ultimately, if it's really bad, we do compost. So how can we partner continually on educating our clients to say, okay, grandma's not around anymore to teach me how to can. And if I choose, the flash frozen, is that better, or is that just as good as some of our fresh produce, because that will sit in their cabinets on their shelves and it will go bad. So how do we partner with you all to really get to the core of what the issues are with our clients? And then I'm just going to challenge everybody. You want to know how to help kids get food is to make it okay. If you're in a community, you help the kids know it's okay to ask for help. So I'm sorry, I did make a comment.
But it's for the public good, so we'll let that slide.
Go ahead. Yeah, I think the food pantries are a really interesting situation because of this is a destination for a lot of this material, but not always do they have options on what can I do with this as well. And I'm glad to hear that you're composting the material that you have to deal with, but how do you get that information to residents as well? And that's something, as we work on this educational campaign, we'd love to supply you with information that you could pass on to the folks that you work with. And so I think it's a really key piece, and it goes back to this health and wellness issue of us as a society too, and making sure that people understand fresh food and how to prepare fresh food, and that they're not just picking up a box of fresh food and then throwing away half of it because they don't even know how to use it. And so
I wonder if there might be some resources from community-supported agriculture when you get that big box of product X, and they oftentimes will include recipes in there for that might be a partnering opportunity. I don't know that off the top of my head, but that might be an obvious linkage.
Yeah, I think Mid-Ohio Food Bank also does some of this work as well.
We've done some things with OSU, I think extension from a recipe standpoint. The food bank will get items, and again, like avocados, and then not everybody knows what to do with an avocado. A partner with the education is so important, and kudos to what SWACO's doing and the education initiative that they're putting out there. And we've even talked, we service daily in the Columbus division, over 390,000 people are coming through our doors. So we look at ourselves as a mechanism to get that message and that education out. So we've even talked about education pop-ups at our store. So we have people coming in our doors. So then they're doing great work putting the education together, and then we can be a conduit to get that information out.
And to say that education is an important factor. Another thing that people don't know WCB does off the radio side is at Fort Hays, it's a huge 30, 40 acre campus. And every year we pick 1 or 2 fruit trees and we sneak them and plant them, usually over a break when administrators won't know, so that by the spring there are more fruit for the kids to just pick and eat as they're strolling around campus. But that started because one day I'd gone out, I had just planted a peach tree in front of the station as a memorial, and one day I went out there and there were 2 students arguing over what kind of apple it was. And that's when I realized education is a major factor in this. We have forgotten how to eat well. So my little editorial, but just the impact of education is so important. Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually love that you mentioned that, because I do feel like it's a culturally acceptable thing that we have to get to. My name is Lamar Graham. I'm also director of a food pantry called Heart to Heart. We're actually about 5 minutes or so from here out of First Community Church. And so we have cooking classes that we do with our clients. And the goal is to have the fresh produce items that we have on our shelves, to utilize those items to cook with in the kitchen, bring the items back into the pantry for clients to be able to try it. And once they try it, they like it, we have the recipes on hand. And guess what? We have the ingredients inside the food pantry for our clients to be able to take these things home. So it's been really great. I've learned about spaghetti squash. I've never cooked. I've never even known about spaghetti squash. I've only known spaghetti from using the noodles. I didn't know that you can use spaghetti squash to be a substitute. So these are the kind of things that we are teaching our clients to be more equipped with. Also, I'll share that we have a program now with Grandview Schools, and it's something called No Waste Fridays is how it started. Then we went to no waste every day. And so basically the kids at lunchtime, they would compete against each other about who could not throw away the most food, but who can save the most food. So we told the kids without starving, so basically, how can you save up the most food? So 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and they can determine who's bringing in the most food. So basically, now they bring the food into the food pantry for our clients to be able to have. And these are uneaten apples, uneaten bananas. And these are things when I was in school, we would readily throw away just because it was culturally acceptable. And so now the kids are learning how no waste is very important. And so now they're implementing that within the food pantry. And I do agree with Amy, it starts with us. I have kiwi in my refrigerator now that's been sitting for at least 2 to 3 weeks. And so if I say to myself, I'm about no waste, it has to start with the things that I have in my refrigerator and I have in my freezer. And so I think that's very important that we look at it from that standpoint, but also making it more culturally acceptable. Thank you.
And if I can, go ahead, Amy, you first.
To take that information, produce has been mentioned so much today. And, when you think our sponsors today, Mount Carmel and Ohio Health, and there's a lot of work being done because food matters and meals matter when you don't feel good. And so, we talk about people being hungry, but I know there's a lot of work being done even in the medical field relative to, Produce RX and, giving prescriptions for produce to folks when they have certain ailments. So I kind of bring that up. I'm not sure what the question was, but the editorial is important when you think, I just know produce has been brought up. And when we talk about all of the innovation being done to elongate and really just make our produce last longer, and I just wanted to share that.
I'll note that the leftovers, the items in your fridge, shop your fridge first. That's always one of the first statements. And there's lots of great apps out there. Give them 3 ingredients and they can generate a recipe to use up all those ingredients that you didn't quite find a way to use.
I think a question that I have based on that, I just discovered HSN and QVC, and they're very hot on these storage containers that keep produce going longer. Is this just another P.T. Barnum thing, or do those things actually work?
I'm not an expert in containers, but I would say try it and see if it works and report back.
Okay. I think it is free shipping until Christmas.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Linnea Bigley, and I work for the Metro Parks, and this is more of a personal question to me. In the whole world of food waste and zero waste, food waste is incredibly important in it, but have either Ohio State or Kroger or Swaco ever thought about plastic waste or packaging waste and how that will affect their footprint overall?
Yes. So I'm super excited. This year we actually announced that we will remove all plastic bags from our stores by 2025, and it will happen before then. Yes, yay. Personal story on that, I actually was sitting in Swaco's parking lot the day that we were scheduled for a 15-minute quick call, and I heard that we were removing plastic bags from our stores, and we're talking billions of bags that will be removed from the landfill. And then I had the opportunity to take a tour, and it was like angels singing. So I'm thoroughly excited. And the reason why we could do it tomorrow, but we have, it's bringing everybody to the table. It's a shift for our consumers. So we're having focus groups, and we're talking to all of you to determine what's the best next step for us. So we'll bring you all along on the journey, but I would encourage everyone to start using reusable bags now. And then from a recycle standpoint, we do allow plastic recycling. We've expanded that. So in the past, you might have been just bringing back your grocery shopping bags, but now you can extend that to dry cleaning bags, bread bags. So take a look at that unit when you walk in and make sure you're thinking more of what you can bring in. But great question.
Yeah, I mean, food packaging is a big part of the equation. It's actually a lot of what the recyclables also get generated through that. And the study that we're doing right now, we'll be actually looking at food packaging coming in and what comes into our landfill and how we can better address that. But, one thing you can do too is always call or advocate to your product manufacturers as well, that you'd like to see them do something about that packaging or make it recyclable. That's always a great thing, and they respond definitely to you as a consumer. So,
in my sense, from reading the life cycle analysis literature, is that a little more plastic and packaging waste is warranted if you can reduce food waste by making that packaging innovation, so long as it's not some of the worst packaging. But I think there's some room there to trade off. Yeah.
This has been wonderful. You've given me a lot now that I've got to go out and research more on, but a lot that I can now start doing and get my family to do with me, and maybe my station staff. Mindy, you seem eager.
Well, thank you, speakers. I certainly learned a lot today. I hope you all did too. On top of everything else, I'm really excited about those new avocados. Let's thank our sponsors, Ohio Health and Mount Carmel Health Systems. And our speakers, Brian E. Rowe, Amy McCormick, Kyle O'Keefe, and Dan Michelko. And thanks to all of you for being here. We look forward to seeing you again here next week.